Margin call causes stress and unrest. One day you wake up, checking your email, there is an email from your broker asking to put money into your trading account. Basically, you got margin call. Last time, we talked about how some metrics to dodge the margin call. Here is the continuation of that. We're going to introduce more metric to, by some probability and analytics, you can dodge the margin call. Last time, we talked about Calmar ratio, drawdown duration, and the skew and kurtosis in your normal distribution that can somehow you can get a bit of understanding of the probability of your margin call. Today, we're going to introduce two more metrics, and hopefully with those, you can get better understanding, more clear understanding of your future margin call. So I divided this video into three sections. First, again, we go back to the return distribution and the calculation of the return distribution. It is a really important topic. Then I will introduce two more metric. One is VAR, or value at risk. The other one is conditional VAR, or conditional value at risk. First is return distribution. Before delving into any metric, we need to understand return distribution. So what is return? Basically, return is the percentage change over your capital over some period of time. Let's assume this is my capital over some time. I started with 100 something and finished close to 500. So basically, roughly speaking, it's 250 percentage actually change on my capital. But that is just a number. How I can turn it into probabilities and random variables? Random variable needs so many values. We can do it simply by shrinking our time frames. Like the first one, when we calculated, it was over 12 months, 10 months roughly. But we can say it like how much every day my return is. And then daily return becomes a random variable. If we zoom in just one of these points, which represent a day, as you can see in just one day, let's say the market starts from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. and my capital changed just slightly. So the return is really low, but it is just 1%. So it is the return in just one day. Now, if you back here, you can see so many points. Each point represents a day in that month. And over the year, I have so many days. So I can say a day is a random variable. So random variable is like rolling the dice. We don't know exactly the result, but we know it is between 1 to 6, and we know the chance is equal. We can apply that logic to the daily return. We don't know exact return, but we know based on the history roughly what values we might get. And of course, based on the strategy. Now, we have the random variable, our daily return, how we can calculate the probabilities. The probability is basically the frequency of specific value to all possible values. For our daily return, yes, it is a continuous value, but we can make some bucket and we know roughly as a discrete value what we can get. So what do I mean by that? Let's say over time, my daily return is something like this, all over the place. Now, if I want to treat it as a discrete value, I can just divide the whole values into different buckets. Between each red line is like a bucket, and I can get the average of that as a discrete value. And then based on that, I can calculate the frequency. Let's say minus 0.8% daily return. I can find, let's say out of 300 days, 20 days is like that. So 20 by 300 is the probability of that return, which is minus 0.8. As you can see, it gets to this hump shape, which is basically most of my returns is close to 0.1%. Now, I can go back to the continuous values. What I mean by that, I can fit a curve over these values, over these probabilities. This curve basically shows me the probability of exact value or the range of the values. If I calculate the area under this curve, it tells me the range of the probabilities. By the way, this bell curve is called normal probability distribution. You can read a lot about that. I'm just gonna skip this for now, but keep in mind, this diagram shows us the probability of our daily Next section, value at risk, or VAR for short. So basically we know how to calculate our daily return probability. Now we can see how we can use that to calculate VAR. Let's assume it is my daily return probability, and it looks like this. If I ask this question, what is the maximum loss you can get daily using this strategy? You might say, okay, I get the max loss amount by just looking at the very left of this distribution and just see what is the max value. But you need to keep in mind, we are talking about probabilities. So it is not just one value. So I'm going to rephrase that question. So what is the maximum loss that you can get daily with only 1% chance? Meaning like 1% chance you can get that loss or lower. Basically the question changed. We used to ask what is the probability of getting, I don't know, 20% loss a day. But now we say, what is the return that with 1% chance, what is the max loss return that I can get with 1% chance? Now, let's go back to our diagram. So we start from the left of the diagram, which is our losses. It is negative. And we go all the way to the right till the area under the curve, which is the probability, is 1%. So, and we stop there. For example, here is around minus 0.5%. So worst day with 1% chance, I can lose 0.5%. So that value is called VAR, which means worst day, 0.5% loss. Now, how is it related to the margin call? So how VAR, the number we just calculated, is related to margin call? Well, that depends on so many things. If let's say my VAR is 90%, and then it depends also on my borrowing ratio and at the same time, how much of my capital is used during the day. I just put some random variable. Let's say my used capital is 100% and borrowing ratio is 10. It is so different if I don't use all of my capital, let's say 10% of it, and my borrowing ratio is 1 to, I don't know, 2. To make it clear, let's do an example. Let's say my VAR is 90%, my used capital is 100, which means all of my capital going to be used daily, and my borrowing ratio is 1 to 5, which means 5 times more than my original capital I'm going to borrow. And at the start, I have $200. So because I borrow 5 times, my $200, it's going to be 5 times more. So it's going to be $1,000. Because my VAR says 90%, it means in rare scenario, I'm going to lose 90% of my capital, which means I will be left with $100. But that is less than 200, which is my agreement for margin call. I need to make sure always I have more than $200. So I need additional $100. And if I want to use everything. So additional $100 is required for me in really bad days to avoid margin call. So in summary, basically VAR is the max loss in really rare scenarios with whatever percentage. Here we calculated 1%. For you, you might say 5. But for whatever you think it is really rare, it tells you how much loss you might get during that time. Now, what is conditional value at risk? Basically, see VAR. Let's compare two distribution, basically two daily return distribution. One of them is this blue line, the other one is the red one. Our focus is on negative. So there are two different, but as you can see, the red one has a bit of hiccup, and to the left, it is slightly different than the blue one. And let's assume 0.6 is the VAR. So in really rare scenario, both of them the same VAR value, but you can see the difference. Just to clarify, under the curve, both of them the same probability, but the shape is slightly different. So on the blue one, if we take the average, we go to this point, but on the red one, we go to a bit further to the left. So it means the red one, on average, we might lose more. So in all of those rare scenarios, if we take, when I say rare, I mean after your VAR, if we take average, two different return distribution can be different. One of them, for example, this hump one, can lose more money compared to blue one. So you just saw var by itself is not enough to know how much we're going to lose money. So we introduced cvar. Basically, cvar is after the point on that 1% or whatever percent that cvar tells you how much you might lose money on average. So it tells you more about those bad days. Are you going to lose a lot, or no, just on average? It's nothing bad's going to happen on the very tail of this negative return. And also how it is related to the margin call, the same exact calculation that we did with var, we're going to do with cvar to make sure we don't get margin call. I leave that calculation with you, but it is exactly the same. I hope this video helped you to analyze your margin call, the chance of margin call when you're doing your backtest. If you're interested in similar content, please have a look at my channel. There are similar videos about like analytically look into your historical return. Also, it means a lot to me if you like this content. Also, if you think that I'm missing something, please leave a comment below. I'll rate them, and see you next time.